come through and check on progress on some of the deals we were working on, and I think his intent was to come in and shit on them. And he came in and he was like, "Oh my god," because Nicole's just awesome, dude. So she did a great job, and he was like, "Well, why would you guys want to sell these if you did such a great job fixing them up?" And we were like, "Well, homeboy, because you said you wanted your money back in 6 to 12 months." And he was like, "Well, what if we just hold all these properties as rentals and we split the rent, and I just have it all go into my the guy's super loaded, so he's got some sort of I'm going to misuse the word. He's got like a foundation. So he was like, if half the rent goes to my foundation and half the rent goes to you guys, we can just stock up on rentals all over Illinois, and I'll just pay for them and you guys can hold them." And I was like, well, that sounds like a win. So that changes a lot of deals that didn't work before that could definitely work now. And, so I definitely consider that a W.
I gotta admit, I've heard a lot of private money and partnership structures, but never heard of that. So that's pretty awesome. This is the 5% private money guy you have.
Yeah, man. So we don't even have to give him the 5% now. We just have to give him half the rent. And I told him what we're kind of working on is, well, some of these we kind of switched where we weren't going to sell them. We were going to do a burr and refi out. So he'll lend us a percentage of that. So it'll almost be like a refi where, like, if we were going to pull out 75%, he'll have to put in 75%, and we'll take the rest of that as a cash out and reinvest it into marketing. So I think it could work out really well.
How is that a good deal for him?
Dude, he doesn't need the money at all. The guy's so fucking loaded. I think he's like a part owner in one of the biggest banks in Chicago, and he just is looking to leave like a legacy and just deal with people. There was another guy he was lending money to, and I think the guy just sucks and keeps like screwing him around and lying to him. So I think when he finally was like, "All right, I've done enough of this with you guys, where I'm just looking for people that are going to be like good and honest and not a hassle," it just is something that he's looking for just some other stuff to play around with and make good relationships. So he definitely doesn't need it, which is cool. So
That's dope.
yeah, it worked out well.
Good connection.
John, what about you?
I closed the rest of those deals out, and it looks like that flip they're through inspections and everything, so it looks like that's going to close too. So looks like all three are closing out. So that's good.
What's the third one?
It was two wholesale deals from PPL and then the flip closing.
Ah, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I mean technically they could maybe weasel out of it somehow, but it doesn't really seem like it. I mean, we're all through inspections and have agreed to everything. So yeah, I mean, just doing a little fix up this week and that's it. They actually kind of asked for less than I thought they would on inspection, so that's kind of nice. Like they wanted me to regrade the whole house. And then I didn't have to end up doing that. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Right on, right on. How about Brady? You want to share any wins?
Hey, what's up, guys? I don't know any of you other than Cory and Ryan, but I'm Brady. Biggest wins for me over the last week or so have been I've been running an HR campaign trying to hire an acquisitions guy, and that's been going really well, finding some good talent. Put a good process in place where it's not it's still consuming a lot of my time, but I've offloaded a fair amount of the process of kind of filtering candidates. So we're winnowing down about 350 applications to what will probably amount to about 20 interviews for me. And it's going really well, finding some super talented people that I'd be excited to bring on. And it's going to end up being a hard decision, honestly. So that's good.
Good problem to have. Love to hear it. Isaiah, are you off mute?
Yes,
You want to
yes,
share
I
any
am.
wins?
Yeah, actually, I had a novation. By the way, I'm new here, so nice to meet you guys. I have three offers that came in on one of my novations within the past 2 days, two today and one yesterday that I'm planning to accept. One by today, and it's looking to be around a $15,000 marketing fee that I thought was going to be a dead deal. It was on the market for about a little over 3 weeks now, and had a little price adjustment and got a few good offers that I'm planning to accept. So, $15,000 potential fee and a closing next week. So, yeah, that's kind of my win for the day.
Awesome. So just a real quick introduction. So Brady's in Eastern Idaho, right, Brady? And have you expanded out beyond that geographically?
Yeah, technically I live in Western Wyoming, but Southeast Idaho was kind of my initial market, and have kind of grown, across most of the south end of the state. I'm originally from the Asheville area in North Carolina, so opened that market up over the last year or so, and do a few deals in East Tennessee as well, Hamilton County, Chattanooga area. So I've got the weirdest market selection model you've ever seen. They're basically places that I've lived and am familiar, and I like to make it as hard as possible. So I like to focus on super rural, random places that have good mountain biking.
Good excuses to visit. Isaiah, how about you? A little bit about what kind of deals you do and where you're at geographically. I know we talked yesterday about this.
Yeah, so I'm located in Phoenix right now. My office is in Phoenix, Arizona. Was doing a lot of nationwide deals, mostly Texas, Georgia, Florida, things of that nature, but I'm kind of dialing it back, so I'm just Arizona now. I do cash, novations, creative, a little bit of everything. So kind of keep it pretty diverse when it comes to our exit strategies. And yeah, I'm out in Phoenix, one of the, I guess, wholesale capital is what they call it. I got like 3 wholesalers right here in my my office complex. But
Awesome.
yeah,
Great to have you. And then we've also got Michael with the definitely rooting for the Yankees, right, Michael?
Absolutely. Love them so much.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm actually on James's team. I'm acquisitions manager for his team. Out of Denver, Colorado. So we keep it pretty tight to this market, and I'm excited to be here to learn from all you guys.
Right on, right on. And then Nicole, are you with us?
I am. I am.
Lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
Can you just give a little 20 seconds about yourself and Nick and where you
Oh
guys
my
operate?
gosh. Well, Nick is the better talker, not me. I'm kind of like the wizard behind the curtain, right? But I'll do it since you asked, and you're always so nice. I am Nicole. My business partner is Nick, so it's Nick and Nick. We primarily do business in Illinois, kind of in the western suburbs, northern suburbs of Chicago. But we've done, I think, as of to date, have done deals in 18 states, 18 or 19 states, everything from residential, commercial, land development, cell towers, wholesaling, sub-twos, all that good stuff. And I would say I'm really lucky to have a phenomenal partner who is kind of like the mayor of real estate. He loves to be very, very chatty and help other people with their wins. And that has helped our business exponentially. So Ryan has been instrumental in our most recent growth. So thank you for that, Ryan. I really appreciate it. And just looking to do more deals. Nick's got a great podcast. If you guys ever want to check that out, it's the A Game podcast with Nick Lamagna. Hold on, Danny. Sorry, my daughter's in the car. I'm picking her up from school. And yeah, we just looking for more deals, looking to do better partnerships, better deals, help more homeowners.
Absolutely love it. Nick, go real quick.
I will ditto everything she said. We've been working together all over the country for years and years, and she kind of helped me realize that I had some bad partners, and I helped her realize that she had some bad partners, and we decided we are two people who had each other's best interest, and I call her my Yoda. She spends all day long talking me out of bad ideas, and every now and then I get one through, and then I know I got a good one. So she's always she's been like a good mentor to me, helped me realize things I'm doing wrong and right, and always comes with the best of intentions. So I owe her a lot, and I appreciate how good you've been to both of us, man. So I appreciate it.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so Nicole mentioned that she's the wizard behind the curtain. So I thought that we would bring out our wizard for this section. This is Gandalf himself, Mr. Cory Miller. He does all the fun stuff behind.
Yeah.
So Cory does all the fun stuff behind the scenes. I've got a little short presentation here about Novations, guys, but I want to be most efficient and effective to you guys. So I actually want to start this in reverse order today. I want to start with your guys' questions. I know, James, you specifically requested this deep dive. Why don't we start with what questions you have about Novations and kick it off for us?
All right. Well, I want to give you my first win real quick, which is we literally just signed the buy side of a Novation agreement, like literally right now. So that's cool.
Let's go. Let's go,
baby.
Man. Come on.
That Michael locked up, by the way. So he's crushing it. And
coming in hot.
It's going to close in a week. So we're pretty stoked. Yeah. Awesome.
Wow.
We have a lot of questions about Novations. I think mainly around the correct audience for this type of thing. Like, what does the right client look like? What does their motivation have to look like? How do you approach this type of person? We've done a few of these now, but they're never huge deals. And sometimes we feel like we're just sort of like coaxing them away from just listing with an agent, right? So I know you guys do a huge volume of these deals and you do pretty big ones, it seems like. That's where we'd like to go. But I think we just don't see as many opportunities as maybe you guys do. So I want to understand a little bit more. What does the motivated client look like? How do you approach that person? How do you know it's a good situation for innovation? Those types of things. And maybe Michael has some additional questions.
So let's start there. Cory, what's been our biggest innovation?
We've been close to 65,000. When we typically look like it's going to be over that, we actually take it down and then double close just because we're afraid of the seller getting squirrely at the closing table. James, can you remind me where you're at? What's your market?
Yeah, we're in Colorado.
Okay. So let me see if I can answer the first part of that question, which is the mindset around why would somebody do innovation? Because we struggled with this for like 6 months to a year. Like we heard about it, we like saw people doing it, and we really struggled to find the value proposition that we were offering. And so this is really where it comes back to, which is like if you can sell it to yourself, then you can sell it to somebody else. And the value you're really offering here is that a lot of people are first, second, or third time home buyers or home sellers, and they have never been through the process. And sometimes their houses needs a lot of work or even just a little bit of work. If you look at the Colorado market, like maybe Denver Metro is really easy to sell in. Maybe as you get to the tertiary markets to like Loveland, Longmont, let's say you get down to like Castle Rock, Pueblo, those areas might be a little bit harder to sell a wholesale deal, right? You might not have as many buyers in there. And this is just expanding outside of like the core center of your metro area. As you get to those areas, it can be really easy to assume that your same wholesale market is already there, but it's not, right? Your buyers want the place they know they can resell a flip in and make a lot of profit. And so this is where Novations can really crush, because you can find a motivated seller in these kind of tertiary markets. And what you're selling them on is the idea that you can lock them into a price. You are going to have to need a little bit of their time. You're going to have to need more access to the property. You're going to handle all of the repairs that might be required. You're going to handle any of the negotiation that they don't know how to or want to do. And so if you are leading with that as the value, that like you can give them certainty in a price that allows them to go figure out what's next, and then you will handle everything else. That's why they want to work with you, is because they already trust you. Okay. And so this little nuance is like, it's not convincing them not to go with an agent. It's saying that you really wanted a cash offer and you couldn't quite get there. You wanted a cash offer, but your price point to get into whatever's next or whatever your expectations are was just a little bit too high. And so this kind of bridges the gap between that and a traditional listing, because very few agents are going to come into your house and say, sure, I'll invest money as needed to make sure that you can get the repairs done. Or very few agents are going to come into your house and tell you not to make improvements to it. And we're not going to do that. We're going to say we're going to take it as is. We're going to bring people in, and then we're going to market it as such. And because you have the market knowledge on the back end to be able to negotiate with an end buyer, and really the reason we do this is because it gives us the chance to get people who can qualify for conventional and potentially FHA or VA loans into our process. They're always going to be the buyer that pays the most. So I know this is a bit of a long-winded answer, but it comes back to, do you believe in the value statement you provide? And if you do, then you can pitch it on that. And then everything else kind of falls as a premise off of, they wanted a little more than what your cash price was.
Right.
So James, before you ask another question, let me add a little bit of context to this. So I'm sharing this slide on the screen just so everybody understands what our version of a novation that we are describing is, because this word gets thrown around a lot, and there's three main types. There's this, hey, we're going to partner with the seller, do a little bit of rehab, and then we'll list it. It'll be remodeled, and then we'll do like a percentage of profit split. That is not what we're talking about here at all. Number two is, it's a price guarantee. So if we can't, we're not remodeling, it's just totally as is, but we're just listing it. We've agreed to a price and we're listing it for higher. But if we can't find a buyer, then we will buy it. Now, people can do this, like Brewer Method teaches this in Pennsylvania, because their price points are like sub 200, and so they can buy a lot of their stuff because it'll cash flow as a rental, right? That's also not what we're talking about here. So it's very important that distinction. Our novation is not a price guarantee. So that's why we have to actually call it something. Some people say concierge service or concierge program. We call it what Brewer Method recommends, which is equity protection program. Right? This is like, there's a reason why we don't call it a novation when we're talking with a seller. It's confusing. We actually brand it as, in our pitch, it's an equity protection program. So that's very important to understand, because it took us, like Cory said, 6 months to a year to be like, well, what value are we really offering? Why wouldn't they just list it with an agent? Right? That's the mental hang up that we have to just get out of our head. And we cannot make assumptions based on what a seller wants. There are a large amount of sellers that will trade a little bit of equity for what they consider to be speed and convenience and certainty, right? So it's a perception. You are selling yourselves as the best solution to get it done, instead of their neighbor Carol, who's going to come take pictures with her iPhone and list it, and oh my gosh, it's going to go through the holidays and not get sold, and now what's going to happen, right? This is where you are selling yourselves as being able to want to be the one that helps them. And the mere thought of fixing up the property, doing any kind of back and forth negotiation on like repair requests or price, stresses people way out. Like, some people just cannot handle it. They would rather just say, I'll take a little bit less. You guys just take care of everything for me. It's a lot of people. I know that sounds crazy. None of us on this call would ever use this service, right? We just have to get out of that mindset. Like, there's a lot of people that maybe the house isn't in a huge disrepaired type of situation. There's not a ton of motivation, but there is a little bit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I like what you said too, Ryan, that like none of us would ever use this service. Like, it's 100% true, right? Like, none of us would ever sell for a cash offer, and sometimes it's tough to get yourself out of that space. But Cory,
there are specific ways to overcome this. Why wouldn't I just list with a realtor objection?
Right.
Which I think is like, it's what the objection you get 90% of the time when you're pitching this.
Right, for sure. Can I just ask 2 questions real quick about what you said, Cory? Because I think one was important. You said a lot of these deals are in more like tertiary or like rural markets. Is that true? Like, these are mainly outside of your core, like Boise, or outside of like Denver?
Well, the reason I specifically said that is because for each person probably here, you have a core, right? And so if you're looking at how do I grow my business, this might be an area that you might have neglected and you might have thrown away leads in the past because you said, I can't find a wholesale buyer for this. This gives you an exit strategy for things that you probably aren't looking at right now as value. And so I would challenge that assumption that you could, for us, when we do this, partially what we look at is if we get 30 minutes, 45 minutes outside of our primary core, like I already know on the underwriting side that I'm going to try to push this direction. And I'm going to push this direction because it's going to give us the biggest chance of getting a buyer's market here. And it still may mean we're going to have to negotiate hard. We're going to have to get a discount on it. Yet I know that for us, it's going to be a real challenge to wholesale. And so if you're looking like in Denver, if you're looking at something over in like on the Eastern Plains that came in as an inbound lead for you, you might have just not even called it in the past. And yet maybe this gives you an opportunity to develop a relationship with a realtor out there and then go this direction. So that's the reason I wanted to bring that up, because it can help you expand your business.
Hold on. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll tell you guys, when we went through the 6 months of, and it was really longer than that, of the eating shit period, where you're like kind of fumbling through this pitch and you don't really believe in the value of it yourself. So your salespeople don't really buy into it either. And then the first one doesn't go so well. And the seller's yelling at the agent because they said that you didn't tell them it was going to be listed, even though it's 5 times in your agreement and you keep repeating it over and over, right? This stuff comes up all the time. And so it's important to have this long view. Once we got over that hump and really started practicing it, it doubled our deal volume, like in a year. I mean, it's that significant. It's that much of a game changer. And you can do so much more with your current marketing spend and with your leads when you practice this, right, and you get it down. Now, there's even 2 ways on the back end to do novations. We actually use a realtor. We don't do a flat fee listing service. We actually use just a regular realtor and pay them a, abbreviated commission. There are people that use a flat fee listing service, and then they have their dispo team or themselves be the dispo person, and then call on any buyers or any interest that come through. So there's 2 ways to do that too. Go ahead, Brady.
The one part about your value proposition there that is a sticking point for me psychologically is that you propose that you're offering speed and convenience. When it comes to buyer requested repairs, that's true, but when it comes to the actual sales process, it isn't always. You can't necessarily guarantee a price, you can't guarantee a timeline, and you can't guarantee that they're not going to have 100 showings. So that gets lost on me a little bit. I feel like I have a little bit of a psychological hang up around that.
Yeah. So number one, the cash offer, this is why we have to beat up the cash offer to a pulp, is like, if you are looking for speed and certainty, this is what gets it done. This is what makes it a no-brainer for you. I have to fully exhaust that in my sales process before I jump to any other option. I can't just, and this is the hard part about the training where you're going to take some lumps, is like you're going to have, let me share here. The temptation is going to be like, well, if I can pay more, I'm just going to jump to that right away in my sales process in the next comment. And I know that's not exactly your question. You're more about like, what am I actually selling here? But that is exactly the talk track, is like, this cash offer gives you the most amount of certainty to get this done. It is a guarantee. It's a fast close, a slow close. You pick the date of closing, right? If that doesn't work for you, I'm going to need to see if your property even qualifies. Maybe there's something else we could do. I'm just not sure yet. And then you can pitch, what if there was a way that I could get you more money? It's not a guarantee. It's going to take more time. It's called our equity protection program. Would you be interested in hearing more about that if I could potentially get you more money? What it's going to require is it's going to require reasonable access, and it's going to require some time. would that solve your situation? Like before we even talk about it and go any further, would that even help you if we could pay a little bit more money? If they say yes to that and they want to come up in price, after that, we talk about price and we talk about how this could take 4 to 5 months. And is that worth it for them to get the higher price? And again, I'm referencing back to the lower cash offer. This is what's certainty. This is what's going to get it done for you today. Cory, anything to add there?
Yeah. So just for everyone on the call's reference, so Brittany has worked with us on a couple of novations in the past. And the hard part is we've actually converted those from cash to a novation. And so the actual pitch between that, when we go from an actual cash deal to a novation deal, like the resetting of expectations is a real challenge. And like when we went through those, yeah, it was real bumpy when we went through those folks, like the Van Buren folks out in American Falls, really a challenge. And so what Ryan is saying, I can't reiterate enough. When you go through this pitch, if you exhaust cash, you do so because they told you no. And you'll actually find that people, and this is actually like a really critical piece of this transition, is you have to create a big enough value gap in their mind to know what they're getting. And so if I say I can take my cash up to 200 and then my novation is 215, they're not going to want to go for it. And so you actually have to kind of sometimes limit what your cash option goes to. So maybe it's cash at 175 and you can get up to terms or novation at 215. And if you give somebody a $40,000 price difference, they may be willing to go for that. And that gives you the disparity within in their mind that they can justify the pain they're going to go through on the timing. If it's very close in actual dollar sign, I've been at the back end of this where I've had people come back to me and say, actually, I'll just take your cash option. The problem is if your cash option went that high, what's your likelihood of actually executing? It goes way down. And so these are the ones that are really uncomfortable when you actually can't execute on a cash price that you said because you went too high on your cash anchor. And so generally what we see, at least in our market, is somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 is kind of appropriate to get people to want to move towards an novation as far as like the delta that they get at the end of the day. And they're willing to go through that time and the inconvenience to go that route.
Go ahead, Nick.
You guys, that's probably
go ahead,
around 5 to 10% of your exit price or something like that, just to make that applicable to other markets. That 30 to 50K spread between
Brady,
cash and novation.
Actually, what we do live is we will pull up listed properties and pending properties on Zillow, and we'll try to be the lowest price. Like we'll find out and Cory has a novation calculator. I don't know if he shared that with you yet, but we can share that to everybody on this call. Cory, could you find a link to that and drop it in the chat?
Absolutely.
When we're like comping it, we want to create enough upside for us to where when we list it, we're still going to be the best option, because we really don't want, like, we want it to sell, right? We want to price it a little bit under market value. And so we just work our way backwards off of that. So we want to make sure that whatever's active and pending, we actually don't look at sold comps as much. We look at what's active and pending, and we make sure we can, hey, I think I can list this at 300. Okay, why don't we go up to 250 on a novation?
And if nobody else is, I'll jump right on to tag on another question to that. So has this influenced, I mean, I get the impression maybe that you're almost, when you're underwriting, going novation first and reverse engineering out your cash price from that, as opposed to, say, a percentage of full fair market value approach to your cash price, even if you potentially could offer more in cash, you may hold back your cash offer in order to leave room for a novation as an alternative. Am I picking up on that correctly?
So I would say not exactly. I think location really dictates that. So like if it is rural or outside of a place where we know that we can get a big wholesale spread, we will purposely anchor that much lower with a cash offer, knowing like our cash offer then would need to be something we would actually buy it at.
Yeah.
Right.
Going for no, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we know we can, an owner occupant is going to pay way more for that kind of stuff. And it just leaves us room to come up to the equity protection program or novation price.
So that was kind of too, is I didn't know
go
if we
ahead.
should put with that cash price, because if you want to anchor it low, but you knew that like, hey, if I went a little higher on the cash price, I might have been able to get them. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to, like, you know, that's where I feel like it almost seems like you have to decide before you start negotiating with them if you want to go the novation route or the cash route, if you realistically want them to potentially accept your cash price.
Well, no, we always want to go for cash, guys. I mean, the shitty part about novations, yes, we can monetize these leads, but the cash conversion cycle is brutal, right? It takes like 2 to 4 months for these to close. Sometimes I think we've had one that's taken 6 months, right? So like we never want to jump prematurely to the novation or equity protection program. It's only when no, that doesn't work. Can you explain to me why that doesn't work for you? Well, because I have $70K in credit card debt. I need to pay off this health bill. I need to, you know, I'm this much in whatever. Like, and there's an actual reason that that cash number doesn't work for them. Then we know it really doesn't work for them. It's just not that they don't like it. Does that make sense? Because if they don't like it, then hopefully we've built enough trust and rapport to really understand what their situation is and talk to them how that may or may not help them get closer to their goal.
That makes a lot of
disarm,
sense.
Yeah, then the telltale sign of that, right, is they start coming down in their price a little bit. That's how you know no, I cannot jump to novation yet. If they're coming down a little bit, you cannot jump yet. You have to keep treating it like a cash deal until it's completely exhausted.
Okay, and then do these work on stuff that, because I might be assuming the wrong way, but I'm looking at it as like a novation is somebody that we get like almost like a wholesale, like you're going to get a conventional loan on it. Like, so like we just looked at one the other day and the guy thought it was in great shape. And when we went through, we're like, dude, there's mold, there's all kinds of stuff that you're not going to get a buyer to get a conventional loan on this. So would that not work for this type of process?
This is one that you don't have it under contract with yet, right? You're meeting with the seller.
Yeah, we were meeting with the seller, and like he wouldn't, like this wouldn't have qualified for like a retail buyer that could get a loan on it. So does that disqualify this type of property?
No, we've listed plenty of properties that are total fixer uppers, done novations on them because it was out of area and we didn't feel comfortable enough that we could get a buyer at that price, or we didn't get it deep enough.
Yeah, so then you're basically just dispoing, still to
on
cash,
the MLS,
but just via the MLS. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but if it's that bad, I mean, what's the guy gonna do? And that's the thing, is like we can't use this novation thing as a cheat code. If the property's really that messed up, I mean, this guy is going to go for a cash number probably 80 out of 100 times. He's not going to list it with a realtor, right? No. So that's the tricky part, right? Is if you jump too early into this and just come up in price, who's to say that guy is a no today, but then in a week there's a plumbing leak and then he would actually do the lower cash price. You have to be sure.
So I guess a question off that in the same vein, like earlier, Cory talked about like a 30 to 50K spread between your cash and your novation. What about when you're also up against somebody else's cash offer? Like, because we've got in our market, everyone offers way too much on their cash offers. Even today, I was talking to somebody that fell out twice from 2 cash offers that were 30K apart even. So
Cory, what kind of booby traps do we lay for other people?
I would actually take that question back to Michael really quick. When you hear something like that, what do you typically say to them?
I mean, I'll talk them through like what we see. I'll just say, hey, I totally get it. You know, people in this market are throwing crazy numbers at houses that I can't compete with. But what I've seen from a ton of folks that we've worked with is that they get the bright eyes, they take that big number, and then they end up falling out of contract two, three times. We had a seller that, you know, tell that same story of the seller.
Yep, exactly. That's typically what we'll do, and then we'll finalize it out with, my worst fear in this situation is that you end up in a bad situation because we've seen so many other people do the same thing, and then all of a sudden they're up against a deadline that they committed to. And luckily, we've been in the situation where we manage our finances well enough where we can come in and we understand the market and we can still make an offer that makes sense for you. I mean, are you willing to trade a little bit of equity for certainty in this situation? What does that mean to you? That's generally how we'll kind of round that back out. And we do lose deals all the time to people who overpay. When I say that, we lose deals to them get it going under contract. We don't, and we just wait for them to fall out because we know that's going to happen. And we try to plant the seeds out ahead of time because generally what that's going to mean is we're going to end up at a deeper discount. And like 1 to 3 of those a month come back to us because of that exact reason. Otherwise, like we're going to close on 0 out of 0, like 10 of those if we overpay every single time.
Yeah, and Michael, I would focus less on like that talk track, really practicing on scorching earth, being, hey, have you heard what a wholesaler is? There are these people that call on these properties, they lock them up for way too high. They don't have any proof of funds. They have no idea what they're doing. And then they back out sometimes right before the closing. I would hate for that to happen to you, but do you have a pen and paper? If that other offer is better and you want to take that one, you should, but let me give you a couple things to look out for. You have a pen and paper, make sure that they have proof of funds, make sure that they put down $10,000 non-refundable earnest money, and they waive their inspection. Can you write those 3 things down for me? Okay, now if they're willing to offer you that price and they have all those 3 things in their contract, I would take that and run with it.
And you're doing that once you know that you can't compete on cash, once in your mind you've already switched to Novation. Okay.
Well, or if we hear there's another offer, right? If we hear there's another offer, we might do that before we even get into price.
Because here's the thing, right? If there is somebody that's offering them that, they should take it, right? That's the best thing for the seller. That's what we're all about, right? Is offering help, offering value, offering solutions. But you and I both know that a lot of times that's not the case. And there's a lot of people that do this, that's the reality of the statistics nationwide, that the fallout rate is higher. Contract cancellation rate is higher. We see it all the time, especially in big market adjustments. Like how many deal emails do we see, Cory, all the time that are just, we look at that and we're like, wow, that is way too high.
Most of them. Yeah, at least in our market.
Nationwide deals that get pushed out in Idaho, you're like, dude, what are you doing?
It's unreal. Yeah.
Go away.
Yeah. It's just huge volume, huge fallout rates. I've heard like 70 to 80% fallout rate, but they just do such high volume. They make, 5 or 10K here and there. So can I ask a little bit about like the situation, the actual house situation that a Novation makes sense? Like, does it have to be like, we've had better success when it's vacant. Do you ever do it if there's tenants involved? What does the house have to look like? Anything else about the actual house or the owner?
Cory, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that. And I'll look up a couple addresses that we've done novations on while I'm doing this. We can talk about. We've done things that have siding that's not even included on it. We've done things that have roofs that have tarps on them. We've done things that are $800,000 homes that were built in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We've done things on 5-acre ranches. Like all of that is within the purview of a novation. Again, it comes back to the person. Is the person willing to accept your help to go through this process? And so all of that could be included. Again, it's generally someone who, and actually when I started with this, I kind of want to come back to it. If you find that somebody's within like their first 1 to 3 transactions selling a property, they actually might be a little more willing to do this because they're going to rely on a realtor for the same thing that they're trusting you with, which is they're looking for someone who knows the process of what it's like to sell a house and put their trust in someone. So that actually might be like a leading indicator when you're talking with someone about how you might end up either at a cash or novation process.
As a general rule of thumb, though, James, it's going to be, yes, sometimes it's fixer-uppers, but it's usually going to be these like, maybe it needs a cosmetic repair, or like carpet and paint, but most of the time it's pretty good to go, right? Because as wholesalers, when a property's fixed up, there's not a lot of value that we can bring because it's already at retail. There's no value to be added by a flipper or our buyers, right? So a lot of times it's going to be like these dated properties that aren't freshly remodeled, but they're also not crappy enough to completely gut either.
Right. So they're turnkey. Somebody would live there basically. But how about occupancy, whether it's vacant, tenant occupied, or owner occupied?
We've done all the above, and I'll take a quick stab at that. So you just have to have different conversations on the front end because it's going to be an issue to try to get access. So if you're talking to an owner occupant, generally we ask the question like, how available are you going to be to getting people in here? And sometimes if they're hesitant, we'll say like, typically what we've seen with people is that we will proactively schedule a couple of times, 2 to 3 times a week, usually like a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Tuesday and a Friday. And then we generally do like one Saturday for a couple hours. Is that something you could commit to? And we've done this with families, with pets, and usually as long as they get to dictate the terms and we try to give them suggestions that it's going to be in the evening and on a weekend, it works out fairly well. Tenants are harder. Tenants, we again do the same thing where we say like, okay, what are probably 2 times a week we can get in, and what are 2 hours that like you can help us coordinate with the tenants to get in to see the property. Again, it works. It just takes being more proactive and really giving them suggestions on when we can actually get in to see a property, and then letting them tell us why that wouldn't work, and then we can problem solve afterwards.
Okay. And then,
so
I mean,
9 times out of 10, though, Cory, we're going for permission to actually serve the notice to vacate. So we have one in Idaho right now. This is a perfect example. They had a lease until we signed the contract in like July or August. They had a lease expiring October 1st. And luckily, knowing that, we got it under contract with like I believe it was originally a December 1st closing date. We did that on purpose, and we negotiated on the front end. Hey, in order to get you this price, not only is it going to be a longer close, but we're going to need permission to also make sure that the property's vacant. Are you okay if we assist you with serving that 30-day written notice to vacate? October 1st comes, they vacate the property. Now we go live and list it the very next day.
Nice.
You're going to have just like wholesaling a property, right? Nobody wants to buy one with tenants inside.
Right.
So it's to get those longer time frames and negotiate that stuff up front. Whenever possible, we get the 30-day written notice to vacate served. Sometimes we'll even just go do it. The seller will sign it. We'll go out to the property and give it to the tenants. You'll get way bigger deal sizes being able to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I would think if you're selling to an owner occupant, like you are killing the market if there's tenants in there when you close, right? Like no owner occupant wants to deal with that. So you
They can't
basically
get financed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. So you would basically just extend the horizon on that, serve the notice, and then just expect, hey, this is going to take an extra 30 to 60 days. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, minimum for us, if it's a novation, minimum 60 days after we list it. I mean, we don't want to set ourselves up for failure. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Because typically we'll lock these things up with like a 90-day and just say, hey, we're going to try to get it done sooner than that. But we have been in a similar situation where there were tenants and we had to organize the tenants leaving. But it just seems to me like a deal killer if the tenants are there for another 6 months on their lease, for instance. Like that seems like a tough novation.
It is.
Yeah. Because you're only going to be able to sell to a investor, right?
Right.
Investors don't pay high enough.
Do you ever get any blowback if you get rid of a tenant and then you can't sell it and they're like, well, you made my tenant leave? Or most of these cases where the tenants aren't good tenants anyway, that's why they're selling?
Cory?
Yes and yes. So the simple way to answer that is that when we go in with the homeowner, we say, we understand that this is something you want to get done. Sometimes it's because the tenants are a complete issue. I mean, we've had one where we had to evict the tenant out because he'd been living on the property, hadn't been paying rent in 2 years, had built another structure, and mid-contract, the tenant went in and ripped out all of the work he had done on a garage conversion and left it in a pile of crap along with the rest of his stuff in the middle of the house, in the middle of us being under contract to sell the property. So yes, this does come up sometimes. The biggest thing I can say is when we go in and we're talking with the seller, we're like, here's how we're going to do this. We've seen the most success where we will honor your tenants until we have an offer on the table. Just so you know, the day that we have an offer on the table, we are going to be giving them a 30-day notice to vacate. Are you okay with that? And then we proactively already have the documentation prepared, and then we can give it to them. We have to have the owner's permission because they're going to have to sign that 30, at least in Idaho, a 30-day notice to vacate works. In other states, you're going to have to do whatever's required there. But giving them that permission up front to say like yes or no, this is or is not going to work, allows us to then renegotiate. Because if they tell us no, I'm not going to let you do that. I love my tenants. They have to stay here through the entire lease. That's going to mean you're going to have to price discount even further. And they're going to have to know that impact up front for them to decide if that's going to be a decision for them or not.
Thank you.
Yep, I hope that helps.
Yeah, and Nick, that's only if they won't agree to letting us give the notice to vacate ahead of time before we even go live, right? This is if they say, no, my tenants need to stay in there until this date, right? Which is honestly, when you set the right expectations up front, it's very few. Most people will go along with whatever you request if you've given them, again, you've created enough of a gap in that value proposition. Hey, you're getting $50,000 more, $30,000 more, whatever it is, versus a cash offer. So I need reasonable access. I need these things to be able to make that happen for you.
Ryan, do you mind if I take just a second to kind of show the range of properties you can do novations on? And this is just stuff we've done in the last 6 months because I think it helps to kind of paint the picture. Because in my mind, I always thought, oh, this can only be a fixer upper. That's what wholesaling is, right? It's got to be a property that's in distress.
Show it.
Perfect. So here's a property I mentioned earlier. So we did a novation on this. You can see the tarp on the exterior. This was a hoarder house. This was sold to somebody on market that we didn't think we can wholesale for in like a tertiary city. Yet they came in as a cash buyer and wanted to buy this off the MLS. We have one listed right now in Eastern Idaho that is a manufactured home on a foundation with a little bit of acreage. So like we can fit that too. We've also done ranch style properties that are in decent shape. And we've done ones that were newer builds that look really nice. I would have never touched this. We would have never even considered going after this property a few years ago. And I think we ended up making about $45,000 on it because we negotiated with the seller and got them to agree that we were the right person to solve their problem.
Can you pause on this one, Cory? Like, what was their motivation? Like, this is a beautiful house.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yes.
So I'll tell you why. It's because we had a guy who went out, who is a newer acquisition agent for us, who built such incredible trust with the wife, who is incredibly nervous about selling her first home, or second home, I can't remember exactly, that she said, I want to work with you. I trust you. I want this to be as smooth a process as possible. You're the person who made me feel the most comfortable about us getting where we want to go. All we're doing is we're moving for a job relocation. They didn't have anything else going wrong in their life. They were financially stable. They were not the avatar of your typical wholesale. But because our rep built such incredible trust with them, she only wanted to work with him. That was it.
This was also the lady that, because we record all of our appointments, and she was the one that said, I hope you guys make a lot of money on this, right?
Yeah, she did. She's like, we signed it for 700. She told us, I hope you could sell it for 800 more as long as you give me my number and you make it easy.
That's awesome.
And so the reason we show this spread between this house and one that's a hoarder house that has siding that's not even included is because this whole spectrum works. And the reason is because the MLS is the biggest buyer's market out there. You just have to know and get comfortable with pitching it and then selling the value to yourself so you can sell it to other people.
Go ahead, Chris. You had your hand raised.
Yeah, I apologize for being late, and hopefully I didn't miss this part. But so we've exhausted cash. Then you're still, or you're moving towards Novation before you move to creative seller finance sub to.
Yeah, good question. Man, I go back and forth on this because one of my biggest regrets was introducing too many acquisition strategies from the start. And we got really bad at cash purchases because we had creative and we had novations. So that's the irony here is like when you can pay a higher price, guess what happens? You don't dig as hard, right? And you don't get into the pain, and you don't get into the motivation, you don't really, really work them at a set number. So yes, zooming out, like just looking at it for what it is, that really depends on the seller situation. If they're looking to maximize the price, that's almost always, and they don't need all the funds from closing, that's almost always a creative, a seller finance or a sub two. If they need a certain amount of money of equity from the sale, then we don't even go to a creative pitch because they're just going to need too much of a down payment. So it's all about what are they trying to accomplish? Why are they selling? Is it a rental property? A lot of times those can go more creative, right? Because if the owner sells it, they're going to have a big tax hit. If they're not doing a 1031, most of these are tired landlords. They're less sophisticated. The appeal of a seller carry or a terms deal is a lot better because it's passive, true mailbox money, right? As a lender. But, with these novations, it's, I just can't stress enough resisting the temptation to jump up too early in the process, which is where we've screwed up a lot. Because cash deals are what make the machine go, right? Like when you're buying it at the deepest price and you get those quick influxes of cash and those quick closings, and you can reinvest it into marketing and everybody's commissions get paid. Like that's really what keeps the wheels turning. This is just a supplementary thing to be able to close more deals. It's just another tool in your arsenal. So to answer your question, long story short, it's like it's based on whatever the seller wants. What is the seller trying to accomplish?
Yep.
So we really, I know in my slide it said price anchor, cash, terms, then novation, but really it's cash and then novation or cash and then terms. Almost never are we pitching all three.
Yeah, you should know based on that motivation. Yeah.
Oh, the one thing we didn't talk about, always get a POA signed. Always. We didn't do that for a little while, and it was such a pain in the ass to get them to sign every little listing agreement, and they have to sign the inspection and whatever. I mean, that's been a big game changer for us.
So Ryan, just one question on paperwork, because I think I'm pretty ironed out, but once you sign the listing agreement, or I'm sorry, not the purchase agreement with the end buyer, you sign it on your seller's behalf, and then you go to your seller and get your buyer substitution agreement signed, correct?
I'll take that one. So we typically, just to round this back out to what Ryan said, we typically get our power of attorney or limited power of attorney signed at the actual signing of the purchase and sale.
Yeah.
When we get to the buyer substitution agreement, this is when we've actually found the end buyer to go and sign. We actually don't typically have them sign that until we're past our inspection and maybe even our a financing contingency. And the only reason for that is that the less paperwork our sellers have to sign, the easier it is. So sometimes we will actually even include that in our closing paperwork. We'll just send it to the title company and we'll pre-fill it out for them, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as it's executed on the day of closing. It doesn't have to be signed beforehand. The reason for that is that our buyer substitution agreement includes in it the name of the end buyer. And so if you end up falling out of contract with somebody, it causes extra concern and they have to look at that again and say, what happened and why are we going through this? So we hold off on that last bit of paperwork as long as possible.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome. And then basically you open title once you found the end buyer, correct? Like you don't send anything to title before that point, do you?
Sort of. So we used to not send anything to title. However, what we started to do was a preliminary title search. So because we have a good working relationship, it allows us to get ahead of things that may come up. Think of people who have solar on the property. Think of people who may have an additional lien. It's not going to be a full title search yet. It can help you get across some stumbling blocks of who has ownership and what other issues could come up. And so we do that when we very first sign the contract, and just it's a free service we get from our title company because we do a lot of volume with them. But then the title like the actual escrow account is opened by the agents. It's not by us. It's by the actual agents. And that's because we use agents to facilitate our transactions. If we did a flat fee listing service, we would be the ones who helped facilitate that. And then our transaction coordinator would run a lot of that. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So yeah, I think that makes sense for the buyer sub and all that stuff. And then the final actual like closing paperwork, like on closing day, are you guys also signing that, or are you having your seller sign that?
No, we don't sign anything on closing day. So what we do is, because it's a replacement agreement, that's what the buyer substitution document does, is it says we have agreement A, this is our A to B contract. Our B to C contract is signed between us and the end buyer. We're substituting those in between. And so all the closing documents are signed by the end buyer and the seller. And then what we have is that we send the title company beforehand our novation marketing fee. Now, that is a single line item document that says, great, we made $26,332, whatever that number is. And we actually, because again, we have a good working relationship with our title company, and this is really imperative. You have to own the transaction, which means you have to tell the title, you have to tell the seller's agent, or you have to be the one who dictates who's the agent you're going to close with, because you don't want to go through this every single time educating someone else on what's new. So own the transaction, own the escrow, because they need to send you the preliminary closing statement before it goes out to any buyer or any seller. So that way you can add in your novation marketing fee and they get the one statement that shows exactly what their net proceeds are afterwards. If you do it in reverse, what's going to happen is a seller is going to see a number bigger than what they're going to actually get.
Then it goes down.
And it's going to go down. And who's going to be the villain? You are every single time.
Totally.
Yep. So you own the transaction by developing the relationship with your title company and orchestrating how the order of paperwork is going to come out. And that is so critical to making sure that your buyers and sellers both feel like you have a seamless transaction.
Yeah. Awesome.
Now,
Can you
Cory,
do a blind
how many
HUD on
times-
these in Idaho?
Oh, go ahead, Brady.
Can you use a blind HUD on these novation transactions in Idaho?
No, because it's a true
Because the
buyer
agents,
seller.
because the agent won't allow. Yeah, right. The broker just won't allow it. Exactly. Yeah, got it.
So, Cory, what percentage of the time have we had a seller mad seeing how much we make?
It does happen. It's probably like 10 to 20% of the time.
There's no way it's that high, or I don't hear about it. Maybe you hear about it.
You don't hear about it all, the ones we get called on.
You're the shit shield. It's not as often as you'd think.
It's not as often as you would think. Usually what happens is there almost always has to be some issue before closing for that to come up. These are our more problematic sellers that we struggle to get to the closing table, that are upset the whole time about how long it's taking or what they're going to get. Like those are the ones that always come back and that yell at the closing table. But anyone who you've worked with that is actually like grateful for the service never has an issue.
It's also a part of our script, right? when we get the contract signed and it's an equity protection program, aka a novation, I would reckon to bet we're not doing this 100% of the time. But it's Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, do you feel like this accomplishes your goal? Yes or no? Okay, yes, great. So as investors, we don't do this for free. We have to be able to make a profit. Now, if we make $1 or $1 million or anything in between, does that matter to you? What are they going to say? No, if the pressure's come off, they've just signed, they're going to say, no, I understand you guys have to make a little bit of money, right? Boom. You've just set yourself up for massive success, because then at the end, if they're upset, you can say, hey, remember in the beginning when I said, you didn't care how much that we made, and that we're investors and we have to be able to make money. There's also quite a few instances where, Cory, we've had an upset seller and we've done some nice things for them just to tie the ribbon, right? When you give yourself more deal spread and you do a better job on the front end of negotiating, you can pay for people's moving expenses. You can buy them a pod to get their stuff out. What are some other examples, Cory? You can pay for what? Just pay for random shit, right?
Yeah, some big ones have been like movers to help them get out of the place. Sometimes cleaners. Sometimes we paid for like half of a roof one time because we had a big enough spread on it. Utilities sometimes come. It's like little things that we don't really usually care about, but mean something to them. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
They're bonuses for the seller, which is we find that to be more valuable than cash, right? When you cover stuff for them. So I like that a lot.
Storage units, like that has been one that we've paid for in the past that really makes some, like it's small thing. It's like a couple $100, right? Here and there, make a huge difference for them.
So along that note, because earlier you guys talked about like putting in some fixes to people's houses, things like that, like instead of where an agent tells them they need to fix stuff, you will. Where do you draw the line? How much have you done for a novation?
I can tell you the times that we have put in some money to the property prior to getting it list ready have usually not gone well. So we try to do as minimal as possible. Probably the most that we'll do is a cleaning if it's like really gross, or if it's like a property that you're like, man, it's just so dirty. Like it's actually not that bad. It's just so dirty. And by cleaning it that way more people are going to be interested. Okay, spend the $500, $800, whatever it is to get a cleaning. That's something we will do, but we're really trying to not have any costs up front into this, because you just never know with a seller if they're going to get difficult, if somebody's going to find a cracked foundation, and then like you just don't know what you don't know with it, and you don't want to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, let me add just one little bit of context there. When I mentioned that, part of what came to my mind was that we don't do a whole lot of proactive things. A lot of times we'll list the property and we'll say like, talk to agent about request repairs or upgrades. And if it allows us to get a higher offer because they know that we can on the back end work with them, like we can sometimes negotiate that. So we've had to put in new roofs, new AC units, new carpet, new paint, that kind of thing. Sometimes fix windows to make FHA compliance. Like some of those things are required to get the property through. Generally, what that means then for our sellers, like we are fronting that cost, but we are already under contract with the buyer. We've already vetted that they have the qualifications to close, and we can somewhat lock in what our certainty of the profit's going to be, which gives us the assurance that if we spend the dollars, it's going to come back to us. Or if we get something like, oh my gosh, we got into this, we found out that there's going to be mold underneath the roof that we couldn't see in the attic. Like that sucks, but this is going to happen on every other time. It gives us also the information to go back to the seller and potentially renegotiate. You're like, hey, you didn't tell us about this. We didn't know about this. This is going to be something that's going to come up no matter what. For us to get this done, we're going to have to take an X price reduction. And because we've got that in hand and we're having an open, transparent conversation, usually we're able to get either a price reduction from the seller or, well, it's usually that, or we understand what's going to be required, then we can make the decision if we're not going to put the money into that fix because they're not willing to work with us.
Cory, I
I
would
had
actually
one
love to.
recently.
Oh, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Brady.
I had one recently in North Carolina, where I, um, frankly, I probably ended up locked up a little, just a touch high, and found worse condition than expected in the home. Of course, I'm closing over the phone, so inspecting post signing. Um, and so there's still a deal I thought I could get done. So I hammered Dispo on it for a while, wasn't getting it done through normal channels. So went to Craigslist, Facebook, pushed it out wider. And of course, then started getting represented buyers coming and looking at the property. It was vacant, so I was able to show it easily with a lockbox, etc. And this is the first time I've ever run into this, but I had a couple of opportunities to sell that property, which would have required novation essentially, because any agent represented buyer would have had to operate on state approved forms. And so I ended up getting this deal sold in cash and didn't have to cross the bridge, but I'd started to assemble the pieces of like, okay, how am I going to put a novation together here when I've got escrow open with an attorney who doesn't do novations. I've got a buyer's agent who doesn't even know what a novation is. Their broker's heard of it before. And I don't have an agent who is dialed on novations. How am I going to put this together? My default thought was what you said, Ryan. I was like, well, one step that I can do is flat fee list. And that could potentially take care of the listing side unless I just totally fuck it up. From a paperwork standpoint. But I'm curious how you would tackle that. Maybe you wouldn't put yourself in that position in the first place, but if you did, like starting from square one, how you piece that together and get your, transaction coordination done properly.
So I'll let Cory mostly answer that one, but my 2 cents is it took us, I think we're on our fourth or fifth realtor, just in the Boise area that like finally gets it and is good to work with. And then same thing with title officers or title agents. It took us quite a few to really get somebody that wanted to make money. But when it's outside of area, yeah, I guess that's going to be your only option. Cory, what do you think? I mean, to me, the risk is a lot lower doing the flat fee listing service. And just making sure the paperwork is okay than trusting an agent that has no idea what's going on.
I would agree. I think if your seller's agent is uninformed or new and you try to do this with them, you're probably putting yourself at a bigger risk. What I might suggest is if you're going to try a flat fee listing service and that's legal in the state you're operating in, then go for it. There are some nationwide wholesaling title companies that do nationwide title companies that specialize in people who are investors and do novations. I might search for one of them to start with, because if you have a local title agent that doesn't know what they're doing, or you said it's an attorney state and they don't know what they're doing, you are set up to fail from the beginning. And so, yeah, I hate to say it comes back to the people, but it really does. Outside of that, the only other thing I can think of is if you are trying to progress innovation and you are using an agent, you just have to probably own almost all the communication, meaning you have to tell them very descriptively what they can and can't say. And then you have to tell them how the flow of information needs to go. And so this is whether you're working with a new agent or somebody who's just new to the industry. You have to basically just tell them what you want, which is like all the information is going to flow back to me. I'm going to be the one who communicates what the offers are back to the seller. I'm going to be the one who then gives you the information on what we're going to renegotiate on. And you are going to basically we are going to work together, but you're going to follow my lead. We are not doing whatever the seller thinks is the best thing because they don't know what they want. And they've employed me to handle this on their behalf like a power of attorney. So let me do what I'm supposed to do. And if you are very direct with them, then you can likely end up maybe being able to squeak that through. You're still going to run into roadblocks when it comes to the title or the lawyer.
Yeah. But
that's
very important. That's super important, Cory, because a lot of them are going to be like, well, I need to be involved and that's not your person.
And just confused mind says no type situation is really is particularly, if the buyer's agent is green and has never heard of this before and they feel fiduciary duty to tell their client to run away just because they don't understand the transaction type, you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. The buyer side, though, I'm interested in that because our buyer side agents only interact with our agents. They don't even know we exist. The only
With a
reason they
flat
know
fee listing, that goes out the window, though.
that does. Yeah, it does.
And the buyer side is generally providing most of the forms, right? Because you get limited listing docs through a flat fee listing, but you don't, as a non-licensee, have access to the forms. So if if there's a renegotiation and you need an amendment or anything like that, you have to ask for them from the buyer's agent if you flat fee listed, because you don't have a file full of all those forms and they have to work off of them. So you're like, well, if you need me to work on that form, send it to me.
You can't just download that stuff in your guys' state. I don't know. Like in Colorado, you just go to colorado.gov/real estate forms and everything's available.
I don't know how that works state by state. I think in North Carolina, they're at best watermarked if you can find them.
So Brady Art,
one of the.
Yeah, go ahead, Isaiah.
Oh, I was just gonna say the flat fee service. They actually give you contracts. You can put in the state that you want to list at, and they'll list every single contract that you can, be using when it comes to realtors because you are working on their behalf as a flat fee. So they provide all the resources in terms of seller disclosures, buyer agreements, everything that you need. Essentially, they'll provide it for you.
That's a good call.
So I think one really big question that we have in terms of like negotiating and motivation, like a lot of leads we talk to, especially for cash, have some type of time related motivation, right? Whatever it is, right? Tenants, they need to sell fast, they need money for something, they're moving, like whatever. There's a ton of time sensitive motivation, right? So I guess one thing I'm missing is like that would rule out a lot of novation agreements, I would think.
Yeah. Well, James, I've spent the last hour and a half with you here. I've learned about your situation. I think I have a better understanding of what you're trying to do. You're trying to do XYZ. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Now, is certainty and speed the most important thing to you, or is it price?
Yeah, and that's where you part the Red Sea for cash or for novation, basically.
Yep, because they're gonna try to straddle both sides of the fence, right? Yeah. And so you might have to ask them, okay, it really is price, but that's just gonna take too long.
Right.
Well, maybe this isn't the best thing for you. I mean, have you talked to XYZ agent? I mean, what if you list it? What if it goes into the holidays and it hasn't sold yet?
Right.
Would you be in the same situation?
And so there you're pushing towards cash. And I think we do have this conversation a lot. Michael, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times you have this discussion and you determine, okay, they do want more money and they're willing to take a longer time. And Michael goes down this road. And then it's like, man, this sounds a lot like listing with an agent. And my brother's actually an agent. I might just list with them.
Yeah, 100%.
Your brother's an agent? Why are you even talking to us?
Well, I do that same thing and scorch the earth of, everyone and their mom got their license in COVID and they're selling half a deal a year. But even still, people, I don't know, that is a tough one to overcome.
Cory, how do we overcome that realtor objection? This is something we practice often, by the way.
Yeah, so the first part is when did you uncover it? And so I'll say something we're actively working on with some of our acquisition reps is that they try to avoid that conversation because they think it might be a pitfall. Mm-hmm. And so we try to bring it out as early as possible in the conversation. What else have you tried? Who else have you talked to? If we get that and we are having this objection versus like our equity protection program, I can understand you. You probably have a great relationship with this person. You probably trust them. How many deals a year are they doing? Oh, they're doing one. Okay. Well, Like we have the benefit that we do 10 to 12 deals a month. And so we have a fairly good pulse on the market about what is and what's not going to sell. And I'm here to have this tough conversation with you up front. Like I know it's not what you want to hear. Yet my goal is not to put you in the position where 3 to 4 months down the road, I've promised you a price that we couldn't get you, and I'm having to backtrack on that. I'd rather have that tough conversation with you now and then limit every Tom, Betty, and Jane from like walking through your property because they just want to see what it looks like on the inside. All your neighbors who the looky loos, like we're gonna bring people in who are the vetted buyers who actually have potential to actually execute on this. And we're gonna have conversations the entire way through about what it's gonna be like to actually get this sold. Is that something you're willing to entertain? Because if you have 6 months and you don't care how long it waits, like on the market and how many people walk through, then I'm probably not the right person to work with you. But if you want something to be more simple, convenient, and you want like somebody just to shoot you straight, like we're able to have this conversation now.
Yeah, another one is James. If 10, let's say if we're not the right fit, that's fine, right? I'm sure you met with some other people. If you meet with 10 different realtors, who's usually the one that gets the listing?
Whoever tells you the highest price.
Whoever tells you the highest price. Interesting. Okay. And what could happen if you just list it with somebody that just promises the highest price and actually doesn't have a chance of selling, and you're into the holidays and it's Christmas and you got 70K in credit cards that are racking up interest? Is that going to be an issue?
Right. You poke on the motivation a little bit.
I actually had a guy yesterday tell me, yeah, I've been interviewing realtors, and one person tell me it's like, let's say his Zillow value was like 375. He's like, why did somebody come in here and tell me I can only get 400 for my house? So I fired him. I had this next lady come in and tell me I get 500 all day with the improvements I've made. I like her. I was like,
yeah,
let's talk about that.
But here's the thing, right? All joking aside, is like if you give them that, you meet with 10 realtors, who are you going to list with? They're going to think about it. They're going to say, yeah, I guess who usually promises me the top price, right? And then you're going to say, so is that what you want? And how are you going to know? How are you going to decide the right person to list with?
That's a good one.
Because really what we're selling here is we're giving them multiple options. A realtor is not. So when we're having this conversation, a lot of times we're going to get them on the cash offer. We're talking about listing. We're talking about equity protection program. We're talking about all this stuff, right? But really what we're doing is we're planting little seeds of doubt in their mind of what could go wrong with everybody else, because most people, this is just the reality, most people have a friend, a neighbor, a cousin that they know is a realtor that has no business listing their property. It is not the best thing for them. It's just a convenience, a trust thing. And then we can just story tell on all the bad things that could potentially happen to them that we see all the time. Right now, we're getting tons of leads of people that are either failed listings or they currently have it listed. We're getting like, this is the time of year, right, where you see tons of listed properties and you get a lot of people, oh, if my property's not selling for this and that. A lot of times you click through the photos and they're garbage, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't even heard anything from my agent. Come on, like, what is this?
Totally.
There are just so many bad agents out there.
Right.
So you're coming in, you're giving them multiple options. You're saying, I'm the market authority. I'm trying to really understand you, James, as a person and your situation. I care about you and giving you the best advice, even if it's not me. Your credibility thermostat just goes way up and way far exceeds any other agent. That's why they want to work with you. That's why they'll trade a little bit of their price, because you're the market authority.
What do you think,
Cory,
Michael?
what are some things that can go wrong?
In a listing situation?
How about, hey, I didn't know that you guys were going to list this on the MLS. I thought this was, you guys, this is just a cash deal. What do you mean you're going to list it on the MLS? This is after we sign the contract.
After we sign the contract.
Yeah.
Like, Mr. Seller, I'm a little confused. So when we talked about us needing to take it both to our network of thousands of cash buyers and our retail market, and then you signed the document that says we were going to list it on the MLS, but what about that was unclear to you? Like, we actually have a document that specifically says we are going to do exactly this. So when we read through this with you, what about that wasn't clear? Usually the answer is my neighbor saw my house, or my family saw my house, or people walked into my house that I didn't like. Okay. And then it has to come back to, so why are you selling? So if we're able to get this done for you in the next couple of months and you can get this number, are you going to be happy to be able to get this past you? And you go back into the sales cycle again. Is that what you're looking for, Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of times sellers have selective hearing, right?
Yeah.
They only hear the good parts. They hear the higher price. They don't hear all the things that you're going through in the contract about us not being the buyer, right? It not being a guarantee. They only hear what they want to hear. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Cory, do you mind pulling up that novation calculator and kind of going through it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me present a different screen here. So what I'd sent through, it's quite basic, but let me bring up the right one here. So the intent behind this is really, if you're looking at a property, how do you know roughly what I should offer? And so part of this comes back to just market knowledge. And so if you're Brady and you're doing 16 markets and they're all tertiary, like, it might be a challenge. If you're getting really good at one market, like, it may be a little bit more common, or if you're just in Denver or something like that, you may know what you're looking at. But here's this Novation offer calculator. And if you're going to walk through this, here's the basics of it. We generally put in what we think it would sell for on market. So this can be something that either you know because you're familiar with it, or potentially you get from a realtor that you trust. So let's say you put something under contract, you go back, like, sometimes we'll take photos and videos, we'll go to a trusted resource and say, like, based on what you see, where do you think this would sell for? Maybe they give us 245 as an example. Or like Ryan said earlier, maybe you're looking around the area and say, everything in this area is selling for 250 and above. I think for us to sell a property quickly, we probably need to be under that. So let's put it at 245. If it sells for the full market value, you put in what your adjusted commissions. Now, some people are going to be at 6%, depending on the realtor relationships you have. We're at 4% right now. We do it at 2.5% to our buyers, 2% to our seller's agent. Sometimes you do a flat fee, so it's going to be even less. We assume 1% of closing costs. We assume about $2,500 in repairs. Again, that's going to depend on the market and very much the condition of the property your house is in. And then we just put in just a blanket 2% seller concession, because right now everything we're selling in our market in the fall is selling for under market value. Or we're having to offer some concessions to, like, an FHA buyer or conventional buyer. And so we say, based on that, if it ends up selling for 245 with this much commissions, these much in closing costs, repair costs, our max allowable offer would need to be about this. And then you show what your under contract price is. So, like, this is how good did I negotiate and what your potential profit would be. So this is how our basic template works, just to show us kind of like what we could make. And then if we end up selling it for 90%, 98%, or 103% of what we expected, what our potential range of profits could be down here. So just a very basic calculator. But again, when we're looking at a property, this just gives me like a quick sense of, do I think it's going to sell for 400 or 200, and kind of what ranges should I be in?
So Cory, so line 21, that's not actually the max that we can offer. That is the net. That's the net after.
Yeah, this is truly
costs.
Yeah. The net proceeds.
Net proceeds. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for that. I had changed this from a different spreadsheet we had because I didn't want to share all the rest of our info on it. So, and And so then you can put what your under contract price is, or this could be under contract or your allowable offer. Did that answer your question there?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now every market's going to be a little different, but at least for what we're seeing right now, we don't have a single property we've listed in the last 3 months that we haven't either taken a price reduction or done some seller concession on. Everything has gone under our list price, and we are pretty aggressive with where we list prices, like properties at, to try to get them sold. And so this is at least what we're seeing right now. Now, springtime, summertime, and your market may be very different, and so you can adjust these as you see fit.
And so I'm curious too, like, what marketing sources do you feel like most of these clients are coming from? Like, is it an equal split of inbound and outbound? Because like I mentioned before, like a lot of our inbound folks have a time dependence usually. So I would think a lot of these are more like outbound clients that are like, I'll sell for the right price, or like the time it isn't super important to them.
I don't have a
know if
specific.
we.
Yeah, I don't have a specific number on that actually. I would say, at least from what we get for our inbound leads, that not every inbound lead that we get has a firm timeline, because they could be earlier in their sales process.
Right.
I think it's a pretty even distribution though, just based off of feeling. It's a pretty even distribution though.
Yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
yes, I think you're gonna have more inbound leads that convert to cash deals for sure.
Right.
But as far as leads that convert to novations, I don't think there's any difference.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just surprised, Brian. Like, you've told me that you guys are doing like 70% or something novations. And I'm just thinking about like our leads that are coming in. And I'm like, man, like I just don't picture 70% of these people wanting to do a novation, like wanting more money to do a longer timeline.
Well, why do you not picture it?
I mean, I can run you through some, James, because out of the last month, like 4 deals that we did, one person needed to close on a house in a different state. One person had a reverse mortgage that was going underwater within a month or two. Situations like that is like a lot of what we see when people finally move forward.
Yeah, of course. Those are people with need to sell situations with a timeline, right? So my guess, based on your assumptions, is you're either throwing leads away that don't have a timeline, or they're all in your database right now, and you have a shitload of leads. Yeah, and you have a crap load of money-making opportunities in your database of people you're just not, because it wasn't a part of your sales process. Right? Like, there was a reason when we added this, it doubled our amount of deals. So it wasn't that our number of deals maybe went up a little bit and then 70% became novations. No, we still got the same number of cash deals, but then we also added way more novations. It's not an either-or thing, it's an and thing.
Both. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess one layer deeper on that too, talk through some motivations that you see that aren't time-based motivations, right? Because like obviously there's, I've got a bunch of credit card debt, medical bills, like we don't really see that very often. Certainly not enough for me to think we have, 70% of these sitting in our database somewhere. So what do you guys typically see as motivation for these?
Literally the exact same reasons. It's the same, right? A lot of them, it's a little bit less, like, right? It's not like the consequences of something are just less, right? So job relocation, not necessarily tired landlords is one, but somebody that needs to get a certain amount of money, but the home is in disrepair, right? That's a common one. People that a failed listing, maybe they tried to list it last year their agent promised them way too high of a price. They tried it. It was on the market 6 months. They took it off. Now they're back ready to sell again. But it like maybe take out your foreclosures, take out your hoarders, take out your hired landlords, but literally everybody else, it's the exact same.
Yeah. Like we're doing one right now that is like textbook. This is the number I want. I don't care what you do. I just want this number. I don't care how long it takes. I don't want to list it. I don't like talking with agents. And me and Michael were like, awesome, dude. Like, this is a perfect novation. Because a lot of times we disagree on what might be other novations. But it sounds like it's somebody basically that wants to sell, doesn't necessarily need to sell. So like they're lower on the motivation scale, but it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just that the debt collector's not like beating down their door necessarily.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They have some form of distress, but it's minor. It's not major.
Right. Yeah. I would venture a guess we probably have 10 of these sitting in our warm bucket right now.
Yeah, 100%. And it takes practice in pitching it, right? Like, I mean, you guys will probably go multiple months, practice it, fail, throw your hands up and be like, this doesn't work, right? That's normal. Expect that. It takes a while to really nail the pitch and the value proposition and say it with confidence because you're selling trust, right? But if you can do it, it's a total game changer. Total game changer. I would say probably relocation is the biggest one.
Relocation. Yep.
All right, guys, I got time for one more question.
Well, this kind of piggybacks onto what you were just talking about. Do you have like a KPI in regards to where you might be doing this more? You know, are your cold callers calling expired listings and you're getting maybe more from expired listings versus a tired landlord? You know, are you tracking that in regards to like a KPI or not really?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with creative deals, right? Why would somebody sell a property sub 2? Why would somebody sell a property at 0% interest? Because they have a number in their mind, right? They have a goal that they want to accomplish, and we can't really determine what that is. So I think you guys will find as you're pitching it more, they'll start to show their real cards. Because you've created that value gap. Here's what a cash number can get you. Here's what equity protection program can get you. Which one do you want? It's either highest price or it's speed and certainty. You can't have both. A lot of times when you're talking to them too, for this type of profile of person, they're not going to know. You talking to them, you stating it like that is going to uncover some inside stuff that's been brewing in their head. Maybe they've never thought about it before. Maybe this was a lukewarm idea, and now they're between 250 and 300, and they're like, "Well, man, the 300 number sounds kind of nice. I mean, that's a sizable amount." The same reason why, like, when we get these 0% interest seller carries. Why in the world would somebody ever do that? Well, if they're making like $80,000 more on an overall price over time, they don't care when they get it, right? So no, short answer is we don't have anything to measure it. We don't do specific marketing for it or anything like that. It's purely just a piece in our sales process once the cash offer is completely exhausted. All right, guys. Next week, we're just going to have an open Q&A with what everybody's struggling with. I think the week after or the week after that, I might have Cory on again because I want to do renegotiations. Cory is an absolute expert at renegotiations. And that's a really underutilized, under-talked about topic that I think we can add a lot of value on. So,
that'd be huge.
All right.
Yep.
This was great. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Kick-Ass Tuesday.
Yay. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks,
guys.
Cory. Yep.
Go
Thank you.
Yankees.
Go Dodgers.